You gotta work with what you got. Don't sweat it until you hit the top. Work with what you got. Don't forget it until you hit the spot. You gotta work.
Welcome to Next Up Accessories, where we connect your next up and vehicle personalization to help you make more money and happier customers. What is vehicle personalization? That's a process in your showroom where you present customization to your buyer. It's a proven methodology to increase your paycheck, give customers what they want, and skyrocket your CSI. For more information about vehicle personalization and how we can help your dealership make happier customers, check us out at insigniagroup.com. If you're a customer of Insignia, thank you for your business. And you're not reading our blogs, which is full of best practices, then click through our website and subscribe. Or find us on social media and start a conversation with us. We thank Side Hustle for the use of their song, Work With What You Got, seems appropriate, and find them online at sidehustletheband.com. Okay, Cameron, you good on there? We've got a little bit different setup today, and now Cameron and I are communicating through Morse code because I'm in a little sound booth. So there was the knock. So today's episode is really exciting, and we're bringing on Rudi Thun from Roadster. Rudi has been a leader in online automotive for 15 years, including executive roles at eBay Motors, CarWoo, and Autoblog. Thun earned his MBA from the University of California at Berkeley and has a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Cornell University. He is now the co-founder and COO of Roadster, the leading e-commerce platform provider for the automotive industry, powering express storefronts for digital retail sales. Rudi, welcome to Next Up Accessories.
Thanks for having me, David.
Excellent. Well, beyond your very extensive resume, talk to me a little bit about your experience and how you got started in the car business. You know, they say once you're in the car business, you can never leave. So tell me how you got pulled into this industry.
That's pretty true. Actually, it goes back a long time to my very first job out of college, where I was a manufacturing engineer for Ford Motor Company, just outside of Detroit. So very, very different from online automotive, but growing up in Michigan, kind of grew up with the auto industry. It seemed like the right path for me. And so I pretty much stayed on it for most of my career, and then, got my MBA after that, and then jumped deep into online automotive, AOL, for a while. So yeah, it's in my blood, and I'm probably never leaving it. Just like you said, once you're in, you're in.
That's awesome. Now, what was your specialty in mechanical engineering in terms of what were you doing at Ford, if it's not too ultra secret?
Yeah, it actually goes back. This goes back even before that, as far as my specialty goes. When I was at Cornell, we built a hybrid electric car back in 1993 for a competition that Ford Motor Company was sponsoring. And so about 15 schools built ground-up cars to compete in a variety of events, it was a great experience for me as a college student. And as part of that, I learned quite a bit about manufacturing the car and parlayed that into my first job at Ford Motor Company, which was building sub-assembly lines for some of the parts that go into different Ford cars. So that's really how I got started. And what's interesting is back in 1993, that's a long time ago. I'm definitely dating myself, but
it's okay.
There was a mandate by the state of California to have 10% of cars be hybrid cars by the end of, I think, 99. And so it's fun. It's interesting. We've come a long way, but the expectations back then were even higher than I think we've arrived at today. That's how I got started.
That's fascinating. Most people think that hybrid cars and electric cars are a thing of the present day, and I've heard stories that there was a GM car that was developed back in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a smashing success. They built some number of them. I can't remember what the number was, but it wasn't that many. GM, when they sold the cars to retail folks, there was a clause in it that said at any time we could come and repossess the car. And so the story is crazy. So in like the mid 80s, when they decided that they didn't want to continue to invest in electric cars, they went and grabbed them all and crushed them all. And so that whole vehicle went away. I think it was called like the E2 or EM something. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of false starts sadly. I think we're finally past the false start part of this, progression. We've got a 30-year history of trying this. And as a budding senior at Cornell, you're thinking about changing the world and working on projects like that. So it was exciting. And, you could see the promise of it back then. It probably took Elon Musk to really get us over the hump.
Well, cool. Well, let's talk about digital retailing, because our audience are salespeople in car dealerships, and digital retailing is that newest buzzword. I've seen it. I saw it appear about a year and a half ago, and now it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. All the trade magazines are coming out with article upon article upon article about digital retailing. And what I have observed is the definition is a little subject to whoever you're talking to. It's sort of all over the place. So what is your definition and Roadster's definition of digital retailing, and take us through what that really means?
There's definitely a bunch of different definitions floating around there depending on whom you talk to. And I think it's changed a little bit, right? In the early days, it was more of an e-commerce concept. When people thought about digital retailing, they think, oh, that's online car buying. But I think we've come quite a ways from that already. So my definition really centers around offering a consistent or streamlined digital sales process. And it doesn't matter where the customer is, whether they're online at home, they're on a mobile device, or they're physically in the brick and mortar store. It's the same experience, right? It's consistent. The pricing that they see between online and in store is consistent. And that's really how you build trust as a retailer. So, we got to avoid this proverbial Groundhog Day experience where you do a bunch of work online and then you find out that none of that matters when you get into the store and you have to start over from the beginning. It's that omni-channel notion that it's a consistent digital experience no matter where you are. And then when you do that, right, the shopper feels very in control of their purchase process. They can self-serve when they want to, or they can get the assistance from a salesperson when they need to. And that's how it works in other categories, right? This is just automotive getting up to speed with a bunch of other categories that have been doing this for a long time. And so that's what customers expect.
Inventory on dealership websites is nothing new. Inventory coming from the showroom or the lot onto the website isn't anything new. And there's been a lot of effort in the website providers to provide more information about the specific car. So what, again, help our audience really understand what's the difference between that and what some may be pretty used to and where we're going?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, for the past, let's call it 20 years almost, most of those inventory experiences do a decent job of showing you what the cars have and where they're at, but they've done very little to help you with the actual purchase process. And so, what you typically do is find a piece of inventory and then you fill out a lead form and hopefully someone gets back to you via email or gives you a call, or calls you like 45 times if you're not careful. But so that's what the status quo has been. That's where we've been for a long time. So now we're talking about digitizing every other aspect of the sales process. And for when you buy a car, there's the price of the car, which is important, but there's so many other dimensions to the deal, right? You've got financing, you've got leasing, you've got service and protection plans, your warranties, you've got a trade-in, you've got accessories, and all these things matter in the deal. And in the old world, you would have to go into the store to figure all that stuff out and negotiate a price. What we're talking about with digital retailing is that you can see all that information up front online, and you would see the same information when you come into the store, so it would be consistent. And you can work through every step that I just talked about, all those different pieces, including getting your credit approved or figuring out what your credit score is so you can find the right finance rate or lease money factor. All that stuff can be done in advance, and you can do it on your own terms at your own speed. Get all that stuff done and then come into the store for a quick transaction, ideally, or have the car delivered to your home or workplace.
And so what are the stats that are out there that you are tracking or aware of about how often does this happen now in a car sale? I mean, how often do the online process happen as opposed to the classic, you just show up at the store and you walk the lot?
Yeah, I think so there's different levels of depth on that, right? I think almost everybody is starting online today. We're well into the 90% in the U.S. of car shoppers starting online to find at least some, find the inventory or maybe some pricing information. Then the question is, how much farther are they going online for these dealerships that are presenting a digital retail experience? And I would say, if you want to talk about full end-to-end, we're probably only seeing around 10% of people that are willing to go or comfortable going all the way through. There's different steps in the process that they might get uncomfortable with. Maybe that's a credit app and providing a social security number. online. That could be one of them. And so, typically they're going to, at some point in one of those steps, reach out to dealership personnel or go down to the store to complete the deal. I think a lot of that has to do with them just not being aware that they can do all these different steps from home. And over time, we will create awareness, whether that's the dealerships or other merchandisers that are, continuing to show that this type of process can be done online. There will be more and more awareness, and we'll see that number go up a lot higher. But let's just say it's probably in that 10 to 15% buyers that are really, comfortable going through each one of those steps. And then most of the time they're still coming into the store, but they're increasingly are people that are asking for a home delivery.
In your estimation, where do you find the salesperson in that equation? So I think if I were a salesperson, I were listening to this and I hear, wow, someone could eventually get delivery at home. What's my job? What do I do in that process? And what do you find the typical response or the typical function of the salesperson in that process?
So the reality is, buying a car is a pretty complex transaction, even picking the right car. And so most people go in thinking, they know what they want. They end up buying something else because there's something more suitable to their needs. Going through that process, typically customers still have a lot of questions. And they might start with a bunch of online research and actually start doing good chunks of the transaction online. But at some point, they usually have a question that needs to be answered. And so, in Roadster's digital retailing platform, we allow for any type of communication, whether that's a phone call or it's texting or emailing, and that all happens through the platform. And there's a lot of communication back and forth. Rarely do we have a transaction that goes through without any back and forth between a salesperson and the customer. It almost never happens. And in fact, when the customers finish the process and review, they fill out our survey that asks them about their satisfaction. They always say, "Hey, this express car buying experience was fantastic. And John or Tom, did a great job helping me." They always talk about both parts of the experience, how convenient the online or the digital portion was, and then how great the salesperson was. So I would say, given the complexity of the transaction, I don't expect it to be a totally machine-driven process. There's still going to be humans involved. That's not going to change anytime soon. And even if you look at, companies like Carvana, who are selling used cars online without physical stores, they have quite a bit of interaction with their agents as well. I think there's somewhere between 10 and 20 interactions back and forth typically to get a transaction done, and we see the same thing in our platform.
So really, this isn't to replace a salesperson. Really, this is a tool that salespeople use, just like a CRM, just like your dealer management system. It becomes a tool to allow them to communicate back and forth, to work the process. In my experience in dealerships, there's of course 1,000 different flavors of sales folks. On the one end of the spectrum is we'll call it the guard, right? Those folks that have been there for 25 years and they sell consistently 20 to 30 cars a month. They never take an up, and boy, don't mess with their Rolodex. So I would say that's the guard, and they would see this as pretty obtrusive because I just would like to pick up the phone and call the person. And then on the other end is that we'll call them the fresh face, someone who's coming in trying to figure out the process. And if I were a new salesperson coming into the process, hopefully I would see this as a true benefit to me in order to help me communicate, track my communications, and then also help me with the process. So do you find that type of response out there?
For sure, right? We see all those flavors. In fact, I would say, and this is sort of a typical breakdown, that when you're bringing some change into an organization, you see about a third, in the case of dealerships, a third of the salespeople that are all in and are going to embrace the technology. Another third are going to be relatively ambivalent. They're going to be like, "Oh, okay, well, tell me what I need to do and I'll do it." The other third are going to just reject it like, a bad organ transplant. And, it's going to be tough to get those people to embrace it. But it does come down to positioning. If management's looking at bringing in a solution like this, you really got to show everybody what the benefits are for them. What's the WIFM for them? That's the key here. So you brought up a few key things. In the traditional process, what most salespeople will do is, they're trying to get the appointment. They're trying to get someone to come into the store and then work the transaction. And that can be pretty effective. Close rates can be pretty good, but it has its limitations. Right? Once you have somebody in the store, if that process takes anywhere from 3 to 5 hours, you're pretty limited in the number of customers you can work with in a given day. And in fact, it's a bad experience for the shopper as well, right? There's so many bottlenecks in that in-store process when you have somebody come in and work through a 3 to 5 hour transaction. You're often leaving that customer sitting there for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and the customer satisfaction is dropping like a rock at that point.
To interrupt you, but I have to, which is a wonderful place to enter vehicle personalization. Okay, now back to what you were saying.
We're going to get there in a second. So yeah, I think that the way to think about it from a salesperson perspective is that I can get so many of those steps done before that customer comes into the store. And we call it, working customers in parallel versus working them in series. And you can be working with, 7 to 10 customers and encouraging them to do most of these steps online before they come into the store, from home, and get all that stuff done such that when they come into the store, it's let's call it a 60, maybe at the most a 90-minute transaction. So you as a salesperson should be thinking, how can I make this more efficient for myself so that I can sell 30, 40 cars in a month and not work 60 to 80 hours? That's what the best salespeople do. Like if you ever talk to, a salesperson who's grinding for that many cars in a month, they have to work some crazy hours. If you really embrace digital retailing, you're getting all these different steps done, and having the customer do them by themselves at home with a little bit of an assist from you. Well, that sounds like a much more appealing job, and the shopper is much happier because they get to do that from home, and then they come into the store for a 60-minute transaction.
Well, it's a key I'd like to stress one more time, because you hit on something that I just never even thought about, and that is working multiple customers all at the same time. So, I see salespeople that are very linear, very tunnel vision, got the blinders on, one and done. And I mean, they're the superstars. Those are the guys that, can skip the sales meeting on Monday morning because they're so good at being able to handle multiple customers at once. They almost walk through the showroom as a rock star. But everybody else, I mean, that's the 1 in 25 guys or gals. It's like the one up or the one appointment, and we just work it. Oh, it's done. Okay. All right, next. I never thought of using digital retailing as a way to have concurrent customers all going through the pipeline, all kind of at different stages. One of the things that we do in terms of vehicle personalization and training on how to really have a great process for vehicle personalization is you don't sell the customer. You set up a shopping experience and then leave the customer alone. And the customer sells themselves, just like you're kind of doing the same thing with the customers going through this process themselves. And you know what? In today's day and age, it seems like the consumer wants to do that. The consumer wants that control over the process. They don't want to feel like, it's the lazy river and you're just stuck on a raft and you got to go around the lazy river. And then when you're done, right? They want to have control of that process as they're going through it. So that's awesome.
And I think if you as a dealer are being transparent, you're leading with a good market price. Doesn't have to be a bottom of the barrel price by any stretch. Like you've got a fair price that you're leading with. And when I say price, I don't just mean for the car. I mean for your accessories. I mean for your service and protection plan, for the trade-in that you're going to buy. Like if you lead with fair pricing across all those things, the amount of friction in the transaction for both parties just really falls away. Dealership can have a higher margin transaction in that world. When you eliminate all this like back and forth friction and sort of almost combativeness, you actually find out that you can have higher gross margins in your transactions. You have to adopt this principle of like actually leading with a fair market price, but you eliminate all the heavy grinding by doing that. Maybe not all of it, but most of it, and you have higher margins as well. So the dealerships that have embraced this, they consistently tell us that they can actually, on the whole, have higher margins as well.
How long do you think it's going to take? If you said, 10 to 15% of vehicles sold today is truly going through this process from end to end. Now, how long that process takes, meaning they started at home and they finished in the dealership, or they started at home and they finished at home, they got delivery at home, or they researched, whatever. So how long do you think that we're going to reach that tipping point to where the majority, 70% of all cars are pretty much sold through this process?
Good question. And it's, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've wanted things to happen faster than they have. But I would say the last couple of years, there's been some forces that have really, I would say, accelerated this move. right? A couple of them, right? I think Tesla actually selling cars online or pretty cleanly and delivering them to your house or having a very quick pickup process at their stores. Obviously, it's a different model, but a lot of the principles are the same. So, they're selling 400,000 cars, right, in a year. They'll probably do 500,000 next year plus. And it's this process, right? So that the dealerships are looking at that and going, right, that looks interesting. I think also just the margin compression that you've seen for most dealerships is making them think they have to have a more efficient sales process. The average cost just to sell a car, not market it, but the sales cost per transaction for a new car is somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work going forward. So dealerships realize they've got to reduce sales costs, and this is one way to do it. So I think it's going to happen pretty fast. It already is, right? We're seeing a lot of very prominent, I would say, high visibility dealerships and dealer groups adopting this approach of having, primarily a digital sales process. Some of them that we're working with, just, great stores, Paragon Honda, the whole Penske Motor Group, which includes the largest dealership in the world, Longo Toyota. They're doing this. The Group 1 Group, Galpin, Fletcher Jones, all these like really prominent stores are doing this. And they're dealers that sort of lead the way, and then everyone fast follows after that. So, maybe some rural areas will be a little bit slower to catch on, but I would say, the predominant portion of the dealerships are going to be on board in the next, 1 to 3 years. In 3 years, this will be everybody that cares about being modern. And another factor that is really pushing this is the OEMs themselves. So, they look at Tesla's experience and they say, not trying to get rid of franchises, but like have a cleaner buying experience. And they're pushing their dealers pretty hard. They're doing co-op programs. They're running pilots to introduce, new concepts and new sales approaches. And, we're working with OEMs on that as well. So we've got several pilots going. So it's coming from all angles, right? It's the consumers, it's the manufacturers, and then the dealers knowing that they've got to be more efficient and want to deliver a better consumer experience.
So if I was a salesperson, what is the number one thing that I should invest time in learning about this? I mean, where should I go to really be prepared if my store doesn't already have it? Or let's just say, let's take two scenarios. My store doesn't have it, and I'm hearing this and I want to be prepared. Or my store has this. How am I more prepared for this to really take advantage of it?
With digital retailing, the software really helps a salesperson a lot, to the point where the amount of training that you really need to be proficient it's not that much. I mean, this is a big benefit to dealerships in that it's very hard for them to hire salespeople these days with the traditional model, the negotiation sales process and the way it works today. It's probably one of the biggest problems any dealership faces. They can't hire good people or hire people at all. And so when you've got a good digital sales process that's consistent and the software does a lot of the work for you, you can actually hire someone that comes out of the industry. Some of our dealerships, like they're hiring from Red Lobster, Starbucks, and they're bringing, millennials and other people in, and they're getting them up to speed in, 2 weeks time, where they're actually selling 15, 20 cars in a second month. Yeah. And that's awesome, right? That would normally take, 6 months plus. And with attrition, hopefully that person's still at the store at that point. So, it's actually not that hard. So I'll baseline it with that. But, we actually produce a lot of content on Roadster.com. And I encourage folks that are interested in learning more about that, how this all works, to spend some time on our website. And we've got research studies. We even have a Roadster University that we help our dealerships with training, online as well. But there's plenty of content there. And, there's plenty of folks to follow on LinkedIn as well, people that are, producing a lot of really, really good content, including you guys, are getting into this as well, obviously, with this podcast. So I always say just, keep integrating yourself with the industry. There's plenty of great content on Roadster.com as well.
Yeah, I had a general manager once tell me he would rather tear down his building and build it again than train another salesperson. The level of investment in having salespeople and good salespeople that make it beyond the 3-month friends and family. So what you're saying about just getting up to speed quickly, using the system to train you on the actual process, that's huge. And we do the same type of thing in terms of how we help a salesperson present accessories in the time of sale. Now, Insignia and Roadster are partners, and so tell me Roadster's approach to vehicle personalization, because you all make it prominent part of the step, and of course we appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about your theory when you come to the marketplace in terms of the place that vehicle personalization has in digital retailing.
For sure, yeah. So, personalization or accessories, whatever you want to call it, right? In too many situations, it's an afterthought in the process. There's actually there's great products, and the problem right today is that people are so fatigued by the time that they are presented with the personalization options in the sales process that they're just like in the no mode, right? No, I just want to go home. And so our theory is, and this is actually not theory, this is proven in a lot of research, that the earlier in the process and the more often you can present personalization options, whether that's protection packages or accessories, the better the conversion rate when you finally actually get to the transaction. And so it's prominently featured in our flow. Accessories are presented as part of that experience, and we actually show them multiple times, right? In the earlier part of the process, when people are still a bit more in the research and deal building mode, we present accessories, and then at the actual final transaction process, we're going to present them to the customer one more time and say, hey, you take a look one more time and see if you want these products. Now that, in the digital experience, but obviously that gets reinforced by the salesperson as well, right? So you're going to get 2 or 3 bites at the apple as a dealership with this type of presentation, and it works. And what's really cool, I think, is certainly for the customer who's at home and has a little bit more time on their hands, and it's a more leisurely experience. They're sitting at home watching TV and doing their car buying process, right? To look and peruse the accessories at that point and really see all the great products that are available, right? You're disarmed at that point, and you're gonna take the time. Waiting till the very end of a purchase process in the store is not the right way to do it. Right? Get it in front of the customers earlier and often.
There's lots of good best practices. That's certainly one, and we support that in terms of displays in the showroom, accessorized vehicles on your showroom floor. One of the things that we've discovered is it's actually 2 different transactions in all of this. So there's the buying of the car transaction, and then there's some money I've set aside that I'm not going to tell David as the salesperson that I've set it aside to do the trailer hitch, the tonneau cover, and the chrome side steps. So that's where that shop process comes into play. And you're hitting the nail on the head when someone is at home, they are looking at vehicle inventory, and right then and there, they're connecting those dots to say, yep, I was going to do this, that, or the other. And so I'm going to put that on the vehicle. And so now if I can combine all of that and it goes downstream together, I am a customer and I'm much more happy because I have built my vehicle, if you will, from the couch all the way to the showroom. No difference in terms of let the customer shop in the digital retail space or in the showroom space.
And there's such if you could personalize a car and really make it your own, right? The emotional attachment to that purchase becomes that much stronger. In those situations, it's just a missed opportunity in dealerships. And so as a focus group of one, thinking about myself, sometimes I'm driving around the road and I'll see, an add-on to a car that I've got, and I'm like, that looks sharp, or that looks good, or but I'd love to have that. And I'm like, well, that was just never even a consideration for me, when I made this purchase. And it's a pain in the ass to do it after the fact, right? That's just work. If I could have done it part of my purchase process, I would have. And so, I think that emotional attachment to some of those products really makes a difference in converting to the sale in the first place.
You're making me think about when folks join Insignia, they're not car people and they haven't had much exposure to the car business other than, let's say, either buying a car, and then they identify right away, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally understand. When I bought my car, nobody offered me accessories. So there's that one connection. And then I'd say it's a 3-month mark, you'll have a new employee come in and go, oh my gosh, I started to notice every accessory on every car out on the road. And that's like, yep, yeah, you just made the crossover. So when you start driving down the road going, okay, there's 6 accessories on that car, there's 4 accessories on that.
You're ruined at that point. I mean, that for me, because I work with so many dealerships, I lock in on the license plate bracket, and I know whenever I see the dealership name on the license plate bracket, I think about work and I think about that dealership. Every single, state in all 50 states now. I think I know every single dealership.
Rudi, it's been awesome having you on the podcast today. What is a good place for people to get more information about Roadster and get in contact with you?
You guys can find a lot of really good information at roadster.com. And if you really focus on the resources tab, you'll see best practices, some industry insights. And we have our own webinar that talks about a lot of the things that I've discussed today. A lot of really rich content. We actually invest quite a bit in that. So I encourage you to go there. You can also follow Roadster on Twitter and Facebook at Roadster USA. So just at Roadster USA is what you have to look up on those two. And then on LinkedIn, if you just search for Roadster, you can find our page there. And we post often all the content we're producing. So yeah, I encourage you to look at all those places.
That's fantastic. Well, we know that digital retailing is towards the future and into the future, and it's here now. So I think we're all in agreement that the more we get to know it and the more we get to understand it and the more we use the platforms that our dealerships provide us, the more successful we will be. So selling more cars at the same time, I think that was my takeaway from this. So Rudi, thank you again, and thank you to Roadster for having you on. Until next time, I'm David Stringer, and this has been Next Up Accessories, where we connect your next up and vehicle personalization to help you make more money and happier customers. Thanks for tuning in. Every deal, every day. Bye-bye.